Um, Good morning, everyone. So for this day, we are going to talk about prepositions. And initially, when you hear the word preposition, it's part of the conventions of the grammatical spectrum, wherein a preposition is a word governing and usually preceding a noun or pronoun expressing a relation to another word or element within the clause. So we have some examples here. The man on the platform. She arrived after dinner. What did you do it for? um, in these cases, the man on the platform, the preposition on, excuse me, the preposition on connects the subject onto the predicate or the object of the sentence, the platform. Same through with she arrived after dinner. What time did she arrive? Dinner. So let's start. Prepositions are commonly used to express direction, time, place, location, and spatial relationships, or simply to employ prepositional objects. So you all know that in grammatical conventions, there are types of everything, including prepositions. So we have first, prepositions for time and place, which will be discussed by Daniel Marquez. Take it away.
So I'm Daniel Marquez and I'm going to discuss the prepositions for time. There are three prepositions in English that are used with time. These are in, on, and at. Let's look at the usage for these prepositions for time. First, the prepositions for time in. We use in for month or year, for example, in February. We also use in for a particular time of a day, month, or year. For example, in the morning. And a century or specific time in the past or future. For example, in the 20th century. Next slide. Next one is the prepositions for time on. We use we use on for a day, for example, on Friday, and we also use on for date. For example, on the 27th of November, and for particular days, for example, on Christmas Day. Next slide, please. Lastly, the prepositions for time at. We use at for time of a clock, for example, at 5 p.m., and for short and precise times, for example, at dinner. Next slide, please. So we have here the additional examples for time. First example is she was born in 1768. We use in for a year. Second example, I was happy on the first day of school. We use on for a particular day. Third example is it is scorching hot here in summer. We use in for particular time of a month. The next example is snow usually falls at Christmas time. We use at for short and precise time. And lastly, the conference was held on 13th August 2020. So we use on for date. Princess.
So if there are prepositions for time, of course, there are also prepositions for places. Next slide. So the common words or common prepositions for places are on, in, and at. Those three words are confusing to use according to many. So how can we determine if we are writing the correct preposition when we are constructing a sentence? So let's find out on those slides. So first, we have preposition in. In is used when one is placed where there is a boundary, inside. So next preposition is on. We used on to refer that something is placed on the surface. And lastly, at. At is used to refer a specific point or a specific place. So in is for inside, while on is for surface, and at is for specific. Next slide, please. So take a look for to these examples. So they they live in the Philippines. So in is used because obviously every country has a boundary. Same with the next example. I met her in the alleyway. So for the preposition on, there is a handkerchief on the table. So um, it means that the handkerchief is on the surface of the table. So another example to differentiate the in and on, I have bag and remote control. So if we put the remote control inside the bag, so we can say that the remote control is inside the bag. But if we put this remote control on the surface of the bag, we can say that the remote control is on the bag. So next, the last example pala is under. The dog is sleeping under the bed. So under is used to refer the lower part or bottom part of something. So now, is it okay to say that the dog is sleeping on the bed? So the answer is obviously yes. If the dog is sleeping on the surface of the bed. Next, please. Thank you.
Good morning. So if we have a prepositions for place, we have prepositions for direction and movement. So preposition of movement or direction is used to show movement from one place to another. So you might get confused in prepositions in the usage of prepositions for direction or movement. So direction and movement, as what I have said earlier, it is used when you want to show movement or you have it is used when you are um, in a sentence when you are going to show movement from one place to another. So we next these are some prepositions of movement or direction examples. So we have over, down, up, pass, and round. And then we have to, towards, into, across, and through. So these prepositions are most often used with verbs of motion and are found, take note of this, these are found after after the verb. So this will be discussed next with Darwin. So next, we have the examples. So they are going to the auditorium. So to is so you are going to the auditorium. So these are some yes, the verb going is um the motion. So Taylor and Selena swam across the lake in record time during the holiday. So the preposition here is across. So next, the mad woman put her fist through the wall. Then next we have Colin's car drove into the fence as she lost control. So next, the escapees ran down the road to avoid capture. Next, lastly, Gigi ran past Emma to reach the kitchen utensils. So please don't be confused in the usage of preposition of movement or direction with preposition of place. So that would be all.
So yeah, another types of prepositions is prepositions for agency and instrument. So um, pre, uh, prepositions for agency are used for having a causal relationship between the noun and an action. It is commonly used in sentences expressed in passive voice. Prepositions for instruments are centered on nouns pertaining to instruments, devices, or machines. Usually, these prepositions are placed to connect the doer and the doing, basically building the connection between the noun and the verb. Agent or instrumentality plays the role of a connector or something that makes something happen. This connection means that prepositions of agency or instrumentality is words that are usually placed in a sentence to fulfill the purpose of placing an agency in a sentence. So next slide. So we have the preposition by and with. So the usage of preposition by if the action that the person is doing. So we use preposition by if the subject is a person or people, or if we have a person that is doing and has done something. Then we use the preposition with if um if the subject is a thing or anything except person, or if we have an object and we use it as an instrument to do something. So next. So we have one examples here. So first, the movie Script was written by Lawrence and Francisco. So Lawrence and Francisco here is a person, and according to the rules, if the subject is a person or people, we use the preposition by. So di ba like who wrote the movie Script? So Lawrence and Francisco. Next, Kendrick is cutting the timber with his electric saw. So electric saw here is used as an instrument to cut the timber of Kendrick. So we use the preposition with, and take note that electric saw is a thing. Next, the poem Odyssey was written by Homer. So same as the first example, di ba? Who wrote the poem Odyssey? It was Homer. So, and Homer is a person, so preposition by was used. Next, Dr. Jimmy opened the door with the hairpin. So hairpin is an instrument to Dr. Jimmy to open the door. So preposition with was used. Next.
Thank you for your additions. So now let's move on to the syntactic environment of prepositions, or let's delve into the world of syntax. So there is, as you know, there is a formulaic pattern in terms of the correct usage of word classifications, such as we have prepositions. If there is for nouns, there's also something incorporated for prepositions. So commonly, the formula for prepositions or for using them is preposition. You need to specify this. Preposition, then comes the noun phrase. But in order to prove that this formula is the commonly used pattern in varying contexts, let's have sentences, sample sentences. So let's take the earlier sentences. She was born in 1768. So she, notably, is your subject. So let's put first subject as its initial position. Then comes the auxiliary verb was, and then your adjective born. And let's insert your preposition in this case, and comes your noun phrase 1768. So that's our first example. Was it proved? Yes. Next, still quite the same, but slightly different. The sentence here is, I was happy on the first day of school. I is your subject, technically. Was is your auxiliary verb. Happy is your adjective. preposition. What's your preposition in this sentence? That would be on, the word on, since we are talking about a specific date. And then comes your noun phrase, the first day of school. Another proved sentence for our formula or for our pattern in prepositions. Next, another sentence is snow usually falls at Christmas times. At Christmas time. Now, this sentence is entirely different from the first two since we are now using adverbs. First, let's take snow. What is the word classification of snow? That would be our subject. That is a noun. So technically, that is the idea or the main idea that we're talking about within this sentence. Comes your adverb. Why was it underlined, even though it is an adverb? In the conventions of syntactic environment, you should note that if it is underlined, it's labeled as a filler. But then, come to think of it, that when you remove the word usually, would still the sentence make sense? Snow falls at Christmas time. It's still possible. But then the addition of the word usually or the adverb usually emphasizes or strikingly emphasizes a specific point of time wherein snow usually falls. So falls is your verb, then comes your preposition at, and your noun phrase Christmas time. Next, they live in the Philippines. This is a lot simpler compared to the first set. So they is your subject, live is your verb, comes your preposition in, and your noun phrase the Philippines. Next, next sentence, there is the handkerchief on the table. Now, in this sentence, there functions as an adverb. Is your auxiliary, and comes your determiner a or a. Then your subject handkerchief. Then comes your preposition on, and your noun phrase the table. So there you have it. Next sentence, I met her at the alleyway. First, I is your conventional subject. Then comes your verb met, and your object her, which pertains to whom did she or he met. That's her. And comes your preposition at, and your noun phrase the alleyway. Last, your subject Colleen. Colleen's car drove into the fence as she lost control. Your subject is Colleen. Colleen's car, rather. Your verb drove comes in, and your preposition into, and your object the fence. Your conjunction as. Of course, take note the insertion of the conjunction as, and your noun phrase she lost control. Oh, there's another one. Kendrick is cutting the timber with his electric saw. Kendrick is your subject. Of course, your auxiliary is your verb cutting, your determiner the, your object timber, and your preposition with. Then comes your pronoun his, and your noun phrase electric saw. So there you have it. I hope you we have imparted a profound knowledge in terms of using or the appropriate usage of prepositions and its conventions. So here are our works or sources cited. Thank you for listening.